My name is Woodie Landeros.
And I'm Joseph Landeros.
You're listening to the Landeros Brothers, where we talk about...
Communication through art.
I like how it sounds all structured.
Yeah. Roll to the
Well,
intro?
you're supposed to say, just roll the intro.
All right.
Okay, let's do it. Today's topic is Forever Frida. Tell us who we're talking about.
We're talking about the half German, half Mexican artist known as Frida Kahlo.
Almost every single person that we know, I'm pretty sure every single person or every single artist knows the name Frida. Frida forever, forever Frida. She will always be known in time because of her really just direct approach to art, and she challenged so many different things in her time and even in our time.
Most definitely. There was actually a resurgence of her art in the 1970s as becoming this icon of independence and of, just finding hope as, coming together with the feminist movements.
Definitely. And if you don't know who Frida Kahlo de Rivera is, she was a Mexican artist who painted many portraits, self-portraits, and works inspired by the nature and artifacts of Mexico. So she really I feel like all of her art was a product of her environment and the environment just around her. She was able to really put her surroundings into paintings.
Most definitely. After some research, I learned that she actually contracted polio, which is a disease that affects your legs, at the age of 6 years old, in which ended up having her father suggest that she play sports such as soccer and, you wouldn't guess it, but boxing to strengthen her legs. So I think that's pretty interesting, as her father would take on that role of telling her to play these certain sports, which at the time maybe was a little bit different in comparison to the regular traditions of a Mexican family.
That's pretty cool how boxing right now, it still serves as an outlet to be able to express yourself, or even to be able to get out there and train and get mentally and physically strong. And yeah, even just going back to where she was raised, she described the atmosphere in her childhood home as, quote unquote, very, very sad. So it was all just about, she was talking about the sickness and the overemphasis of religion and the controllingness, and just the atmosphere around it was just, like she said, very, very sad. So I could just imagine that boxing would serve her very well, not only on the physical aspect, but on the emotional aspect of it.
Right. Actually, tying in, how ironic or how unexpected, but yesterday I was attending the fourth annual women's tournament out in Tijuana, Mexico, that was hosted by a boxer by the name of Kenya, which is one of my friends. And I showed up to there, and it's crazy to see that there was about 10 to 12 fights only of girl boxers. And I think that's a really inspiring thing, because it shows that we're sort of leveling out the playing field and allowing for women to become more active within these main media sports, I would say. Boxing has been a very classical sport, and not to say that but the sport has secluded women, but I definitely would say that the pay rates for, say, Mayweather...
I think it has.
You would say so?
Yeah. Earlier in time, obviously every sport was secluding women.
Right. But of modern times.
Okay,
I'm not saying in the recent times, 10
yeah.
years, people have been doing that purposely, but I would say that there's been just a pretty big gap as far as the pay goes. I don't want to get too specific, but with someone like Floyd Mayweather having won his last fight and getting hundreds of millions of dollars, not to say that he didn't deserve every penny of that pay, but I would say that there are other fighters out there that perhaps should be getting similar pay. But Floyd Mayweather is a whole other subject. He's a whole other animal who really learned his way throughout the business of boxing.
Yeah. And then talking about Mexican woman in Mexico, she actually in 1941, she was commissioned by the Mexican government to paint portraits of important women in Mexico. So she was like a part of like a huge movement to be able to showcase these women in the best light through her portraits. And I think that's just amazing how she was able to do that, and how she was able to even make the name for herself by having the self portrait. I guess I've always pointed or painted myself in a more abstract form, or a more cartoon or animated self-portraits. But I'm really starting after Van Gogh, and then now after seeing Frida's works, it just kind of makes me wish I could do more realism and be able to do a self-portrait, to be able to look at myself in that way, because it's exciting to see how like their journey through it. And then also the fact that I believe that your face is your logo. So like, you know, the fact like that she has her eyebrows a certain way, and then it's not, you know, that's like her logo. That's her logo piece. And a lot of people right now are like, they don't feel that something like looks good, so they go ahead and they try to change it to the social norms, and they try to like, if that was happening right now, people would say, well, just shave it,
right?
You know. But she was really able to put that into a self-portrait and able to look at herself and like just find that beauty and find it's just amazing. It makes me want to take off my hat and like wear my frizzy hair, and just say like, this is me, That's my logo.
Yeah.
Like it or not, this is me.
Right, and it's not to say that the hat, or say someone like Casey Neistat, like his glasses, it's not that he's trying to hide anything, or maybe it is, I don't know, that's something personal, but that's not to say that that's not something that's working for him as far as the branding goes, because he could very well take those glasses off and, open his own, open to the public as to why he no longer needs the glasses. But as far as it's working right now, it's pretty good.
But even his face by itself,
right?
It's his logo.
Yeah. At this point, because I think he has a pretty good balance.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
He has like just certain structures in his face that you're kind of like, oh yeah, that's him.
Yeah.
And also the skateboard, different things like that.
Yeah.
Which, okay, anyways, to tie back into that, women prior to Kahlo who attempted to communicate the wildest and deepest of their emotions were often labeled hysterical or condemned as being insane, and that is according to the artstory.com or artstory.org website, which goes into her studies, or into the study of her. And I think that's pretty reflective as to maybe the time frame at that time, and about the standards and it states that while men were actually aligned with the more melancholy character type, which can go back to, say, someone like Edgar Allan Poe or these other writers who we sort of, how do you say, not idolize them, but work upon their sadness and, work through the through the vines and everything to find their central person as being a sad individual, and that's inspiring for men. But at that time, it was almost, for women, it was considered as being insane, as they say.
Yeah.
So, anything you have to say about that?
I kind of got lost in the beginning of it, to be honest with you. What was the first statement that you said? I got stuck on that.
That she, prior to her attempts, or to her art that she was creating, there were many instances in which women were being characterized as being deeply emotional and hysterical and insane.
Yeah. Well, okay, that's what I was going to say. So I would also say that, like before, men wouldn't really, like, it was just like, do your job, men don't have that sort of emotional aspect. So, and women were more free about that, to be able to like try to express it. So whenever like men would hear it, it would just be like, why are you being so emotional or crazy or insane or whatever?
Right.
So I think it was even like an issue going on with like the men side of it, and I think it's still going on, that, it's like, to show that emotion or to show that vulnerability sometimes is not accepted in most like places.
Right. Even going back to even what we were talking about in the last episode, where you mentioned the hip hop documentary that is shown on Netflix at the moment. We were speaking in the car, at least in our own privacy. We're talking about how it was something so territorial or something so masculine, but at the same time, they were just getting everything off their chest as men. And I think that that's a pretty good way to put it, as something being, as they were saying, these different tribes almost, representing their block and, having confrontations and having b-boy battles. I think it's in men's nature to have those sort of conflicts. Although it maybe lead to some negative things, it's sort of continuous throughout the world of art, I would say.
And when they started winning was really when they showed that sort of emotional side to it, like Tupac. Mm-hmm. He was able to really showcase like the struggles of woman and the struggles of all, like, of just being in the streets.
Right.
And then he, everybody knows him now.
Yeah.
And like just being like an artist. I mean, like for an artist, your mission should be to awaken, to disturb, to communicate, to command, to instigate, to even provoke, to like really put your voice out there. Like it's our platform to be able to speak. Like if you're not, like anybody, like as an artist, you can do all those things and you can really like push out a message. So like Frida, hands down to Frida, she was able to communicate all of those struggles through her art pieces. And I mean, art pieces like the two Fridas, the broken column, it's crazy. I really like the two Fridas personally. It's two Fridas sitting side by side, showing one version is the loved and another version is the unloved version of Frida.
And what touched you about that piece?
Well, I just love the way that she paints. First off, second off, I always feel like, there's always two sides to every single story, and I feel like as people sometimes we just like to share one because it's what we feel that the people want, but the people want to see both sides. Like, okay, so I am an artist and I like to create things. That's what I feel like people want to see, but people also want to see the struggles of it and the downfall or the creative block and that sort of frustrational side. So if I were to make a piece of the two Woodies, then it would be one side, it would be me creating something amazing, and another side with me putting my head through a canvas and like screaming, because I want to showcase, you know what I mean? So it's just like
a dynamic.
Yeah, and even showing that in like a business interview or like just other locations, sometimes we want to showcase that perfect picture of like, hi, I'm happy, I'm perfect, I like hire me. And the other side of it is like, I have issues like you. I'm not perfect. Sometimes I mess up, but I just wish it was more acceptable, or I wish it was like it was okay, or we were a little bit happier about showing that sort of other side. And then now, like, I know that if I'm ever in sort of like or like in a partnership or an interview sort of environment, I'm more open about saying stuff like that. So I just started this podcast with Daniel, this other podcast called Milk and Cereal, and I told him straightforward, I don't like writing. I don't know how to write that well, so can you do that part of it? So I showed that sort of negative aspect of it, which, in most cases is not even negative, it's just negative in our own heads. So like just she was able to showcase that struggle that I feel like I even have, or that other people have, or that you have with boxing.
Right. Definitely. We were speaking about, sorry, I kind of got a little off track, but tying it back to, the different struggles, say, as you had being loved and then being unloved, we could see that she actually, in one point of her life, suffered from a car accident that fractured multiple bones in her body, including a crushed pelvis and a metal rod that actually went straight through her. And what that ended up leading to was a really long recovery in which she had herself stuck in isolation and stuck in her own thoughts. And I think that even if you haven't been in a car accident, or maybe perhaps something of such a heavy disaster like that, a lot of us can sort of relate to that idea of, say, even with myself, going back to boxing, if I have a really long time out of the gym, I could feel my my emotions starting to kind of crumble, and my whole life just kind of starts getting weird because I have such a routine and such a constant repetition of getting all my frustrations out in the gym. And with something like this, you could see it was almost the opposite, where she started to have all that time alone to herself and kind of centralize as to what do all these words mean that are coming up in my head.
Yeah. It's the time away from the things that you do that makes you really think. Like, I'm not sure if this is 100% true. I have to ask my parents. But didn't they make their first business because my dad was injured, or our dad was injured, and then my mom was on paid relief for being pregnant.
Right.
So they had enough time to step away from the normal routine to be able to build a business. And they said, I can do this because they were both getting paid for 6 months to be out of work. So that like, just picturing that is really like just being able to step back and be able to make or really like self-reflect and like look at something and say like, you know, like what can I create with this time that I have like alone. And just like like you said, during her recovery, she started, you know, painting more, like, or at least she started painting a lot more, and she started going back to, which at that time wasn't her career or her life, like what she was doing like 24/7. But she had pretty much returned to her childhood hobby of art with the idea of becoming an artist by having that sort of like, you know, yeah. And I really feel like it's like that whole frustrations lead to breakthroughs, and how she was probably just in there feeling so many different emotions, probably reflecting on all of the things wrong and creating something amazing out of it, which I see the little bits of symbols inside of the flowers that were in her hair, and the little bit of light that was around, like the color choices that she used, and sort of the paintings that she had with the very monotone face. She found the brightness on the edges of the darkness.
Yeah, and with her past having, you know, as we said, she had polio, she suffered from an accident. She was actually, to add on to the list of tragedies, she was sexually abused at her German school that she was attending, and that actually forced her to get out of that school because her parents were having enough of that, and they felt pretty much disgusted from what had happened. And however, luckily, in 1922, the Mexican Revolution and the Minister of Education installed a new plan which would offer national preparatory or prep school for women. And with this being at place, Kahlo was actually chosen and began her studies. She actually studied things such as social science and started getting more involved into political science, which kind of led her on to her stance on feminism and on equality. Which is kind of funny, not funny to say, not to point it out, but as many would say, you know, she is standing up for women. And the end of it all, we know that she was actually bisexual. So in that sense, not only was she standing with women, she was also having relationships and was also very aware of both sides, even in some situations such as in, sorry about this, in 1926, she was actually found in a photograph with full male attire, meaning that she didn't really hold on to those social norms of being a man or being a woman. She kind of, you know, dabbled in both because she just felt that it was the pinnacle of her expression of power and of independence.
Yeah, I know. We have a structure here, like we like pull notes and stuff, and we like. But I want to go off the grid a little bit and ask you a question.
Yeah.
So, what do you feel that your social norms are for a boxer?
Wait, by the way, we kind of have to have evidence sometimes because or else we just get too off track.
No, yeah, if we talk about random things, it doesn't make sense. But
all right,
sense. But what do you feel like your social norms are for like as a boxer?
Well, I think my social norms, not to get like too touchy and all, but perhaps that's just me.
Get touchy.
All right. I think as a boxer, we're kind of held to this idea of being masculine and of portraying this, idea of being the macho man, especially now adding on to my other social norm, which is of being a Mexican American and having a stance in that whole world. And also just being unemotional and pretty dull in expression. And that actually gets really frustrating for myself because especially having interests in fashion and all, it can get in some situations feminine, but it just all goes back to what we have established as this idea of femininity. And I can pull up thousands and thousands of photos of men of the Mexican culture or of the Native American culture, of whatever culture it may be, that are in short skirts, that are, having their tribal dances, and that is considered their form of masculinity. But in comparison to what we have established in our new modern era of what masculinity is, say a suit or say, pants, jeans, all that stuff, it's completely opposite.
Yeah, I just went to San Diego and I saw like a tribal dance actually from Zacatecas, which is a place in Mexico nearby where my parents grew up at, or my parents' families, like, or wherever they were from. And they were all in very short, the tribal the skirts that they wear, and they were dancing and yelling and doing stuff like this. But when we put it in a modern sense and we put it in like our time, then it turns into be like, why are you wearing this, or why are you wearing that, or what are you doing, or are you okay? Right. Are you, but that was at their time, like that's how they expressed it, and that's like what they did. But like what we're doing right now, like that's what we do.
Right. I think there is this constant battle between the fighter who is, say in my situation, the fighter who is a hardworking individual who, goes out there swinging with all his heart, and then the passionate individual. And not to say that a person can have both of the aspects, but I can definitely tell you that there is more of emphasis on the hardworking side in the means of marketing and in the means of sales to say, say someone like Marquez. I'm sure he has tons of interviews out there where he's given out little hints as to his own interests, but I wish that we had a little bit more documentation, perhaps of who he was or who he is as an individual, and maybe what his more passionate sides or creative sides of him are. And that's at least for myself, but I know that those types of things don't really sell because at the end of the day, we are in the ring throwing punches and trading leather.
Yeah, I think, and then also like as an artist, whenever I see an artist or an athlete or someone on whatever platform that you're like watching these individuals, I like to see the person that like I want to be as opposed to the person that I have to be. So like when I see someone being like all like salesy and da-da-da, when I was in the real estate world, it was just not, it was kind of cringy because I knew that that's what we had to be. But then when I saw someone like Grant Cardone, and he was just being silly and having fun and just being himself, I was like, I want to be like that. And that's the person that I wanted to be. So really when it comes down to creating like history, if you are that person that you want to be, then you can inspire others to be just like that. And I feel like a lot of boxers probably look at the traditional boxer and say, yeah, that's what we have to be. Right. And I think it's amazing that you are able to challenge that and be the boxer and the person that you want to be, because then you're going to inspire the youth to be able to look at it in a different perspective and to be able to say, I can express myself, through boxing and the social norms, and then also on my side, like I can do whatever I want because that's the world that we live in.
Right. I think there's so many opportunities out there, and I know maybe some people will like misconstrue what I'm trying to say and all. I don't think that it's technically negative that we have to stand for boxing in the established norms that are set, because look where boxing has gotten. It's it has some of the highest paying athletes in the world, and I think it's very successful. However, I'm just saying that I enjoy having a voice, and I enjoy standing for the youth and being able to inspire the youth with as much as I can. But
clarify, inspire the youth to do what?
Inspire the youth to have a voice and to cast a shadow for the next generations. I think we're a little bit too selfish, and I think that's just in nature to only think about the 100 years or 80 years that we have on this earth. But personally, I can remember since I was young just always feeling like, how am I going to be able to help the younger person out so that they can be able to help out the next person. It's like the ladder effect. And I hope that could be something that I could achieve in my lifetime. But let's talk about Frida and the distribution of
No,
her.
no, no, no. I want to go back a little bit.
Okay.
Give me a second.
I
So
was gonna,
I
like-
think that the boxing portion of it is really interesting because the people that didn't go with the norms are the people that we know in history, and that we don't really like see it in that time, but we see it in the future. Muhammad Ali, with his crazy wild footsteps, was just like people were getting pissed off at it because it wasn't the classical, it wasn't, and then he was yelling in the interviews as opposed to just, he was doing something so different. And then also Mayweather, since you said Mayweather, he's charging a lot more, he's doing a lot of different things, they're doing things that people normally wouldn't do. I think Mayweather even just look at all of like boxing history and like see the recklessness and the expressiveness and how different they are than like the normal individual. So I would really say like advice for anybody, for a boxer or an athlete, artist, is just like if you do something, like if you do what you want to do, which is different, then that's how you're going to be known. That's how you're going to you're really going to put a stamp on your face.
Definitely. Staying on the subject. Wait, what was I going to get to? Oh, the number one thing I hate is having to watch the documentary about the fighter who overdosed on drugs, who fell into debt, who lost his family, and now it is the upcoming story of how he's coming back into society and he is becoming more of a successful individual. Although it's a great story to be able to have, I think it's too much of a recurring theme, and we really need to, as boxers, have a little bit more of maintenance on our finances and have more self-respect. And I think that's something such as that Muhammad Ali or say someone like Mayweather had established because they knew their value. And not to say that those people who happen to come back from depression or whatever it may be aren't strong. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that I hope in the future of boxers we can all come together and understand that these struggles are pretty common and that we don't need to have the ongoing story of the underdog who ended up coming back in the ring, because it's just sad.
Yeah.
I know some people who have been ridden of all their finances because of a bad contract. I know some people who have, been even in hospitals because of the decisions that they made while cutting weight or while just having fun in the party life. And I think that it's not something that should be admired.
Yeah.
And that just adds on.
Why are we talking about this? Because of the communication portion that someone has when they're sending out their image, and also like sending out their art and sending out the logo of their face, and how the effectiveness of it, and how you can also push out different ideas or moral beliefs, all that stuff, and how Frida was able to do that.
How many people, I'm going to ask you a
In
question.
a great way.
How many people do you think are making good money off of the distribution of these people's names? So, I mean, I'm not going to try and sound too cutthroat about this, or I'm trying to water this down a little bit, because I know some people always say oh, well, it's still art. We're representing Mexican culture, representing all these different things. But what I'm trying to say is that I've seen so many people at art shows who just do printouts of Frida Kahlo's work or of a self-portrait of herself, or they make kind of like a funny version of it, put like a mustache on her or something like that, or put her on a mug and put like a funny quote on the side of it. I wonder how much goes into their sales and how much people are getting a career off of art that perhaps they're not really passionate about. They're just sort of, as we say, like recycling art.
I see recycling art is like a big push of why like people are so interested in art nowadays too, because I feel like we're in the digital reproduction age, just like how we were talking about Instagram made me do it. Like people feel that sort of like artistic push because they can push other people's art and they can call it art just because they print it on something else. Like even if you talk about like cakes, if you print out the picture on there, you print out like the Star Wars creation or whatever on a cake, and then it's like, oh, this is my art, and they put just the little drizzle line around it, or they're even taking a photograph of it, or even recording it and making memes, or making. It's just like the reproduction of it is so like.
But is
it's
there any
insane.
value? Is there any value to any of that?
Well, there's money, and
I'm not seeing like money,
I mean,
like because you could buy I'm sure a T-shirt of
it's
Frida
appreciating
Kahlo.
it. I feel like because like you can go to the art shows, and there's so many. If you go to any Hispanic art show, they're gonna have at least 2 or 3 Frida booths.
Yeah.
Booths. They're gonna have at least 2 or 3 of them. In the San Diego Art Walk, there was 4 of them.
Right.
And then even I think in downtown Riverside right now, they just have 2, and it's all year round.
Right.
It's just that appreciation for it, which I think goes into. It's like it's art, and then it's business, and then it's also just like some sort of satisfactional thing that makes you happy, or whatever you like to do it. If it makes you happy, then cool.
Yeah.
Cool beans.
I totally agree with your saying. By spreading her message or the meaning of her name, it's inspiring and it's great for the future of art. But I would just hate to have me to be that person who has to go home every day knowing that they just made a couple prints of Frida's work and don't really actually care about what the art means. I think that's kind of.
There's always going to be the people that don't care.
I know, but it's just kind of sad that the distribution of that person's work and all their frustrations is being let go with such ease.
Go to downtown LA. Obey is there's so much reproduced clothing that they sell for an affordable price, and it's just that it's gonna happen because it's just not. Some people don't even know what Obey is or what it stands for, and they're just gonna print because they could sell.
Yeah, and it's probably gonna be something even in my stance being a little biased because I've had experience with trying to avoid fake shoes or trying to avoid all those replica companies. And
What about sampling though?
Sampling in music? I think that's actually interesting. We could talk about that in another podcast.
You want to do it for the next one?
Let's do it. So hip-hop was actually based off of sampling. The drum breaks, the different crashes, the cymbals. And there's so many different things that were made from sampling, say, first starting out with DJing and stuff like that. But yeah, it's kind of controversial, as I said, but in that case, I wouldn't necessarily say that you're reproducing it without having a voice on it. Because say with the samples, you have someone like James Brown, who's actually the most sampled artist in the world. But you have some great artists rapping on top of those beats. So if someone were to say, have a picture of Frida Kahlo and then add all kinds of things on top of it that were original to their own mindset, then I would appreciate that. But it's not the same as just putting out, like reproducing the same song and then just putting it out. That's pretty much the same.
Then it's copyright.
Then it's copyright, but that's yeah.
Well, let's do the next podcast on sampling.
All right, let's do it. Yeah.
Because we're already over time. All right, guys. Thanks for listening.
Peace.